Hey, house kids. Eric here. Today is Saturday, October 3rd. We're in the month of October. And we today are studying in this lesson Joshua and Caleb. But hold on, before we get into Joshua and Caleb, we need to rewind and go back because there's some important stuff that we need to remember before we get to Joshua and Caleb. So let's recap. Going all the way back, if you remember, into Genesis, God promised Abraham that he was going to have lots of children, and those children would end up being the Israelites, God's chosen people, and eventually promised them that they would settle down in the land of Canaan. And that's why it's called the Promised Land, because God's promising Abraham that they will end up there. So God also gives that promise to his son, Isaac, as well, if we remember. And we also got to remember that God's promises always come true. Not always how we think they will, but they always come true. God is 100% trustworthy. So he makes that promise to Abraham, and then eventually you go down and there's Joseph, and they end up, you remember, in Egypt, and then they're in Egypt, and yay, everything's great there, and then all of a sudden the Egyptians are like, not anymore, and they're like, you're enslaved, oh no, and then they're enslaved, and then all of a sudden God's like, I'm going to rescue them, and so he gets Moses, and Moses helps rescue them, and they go through the Red Sea, whoa, wow, that's amazing, and he escapes from the Egyptians, and there was a huge rescue, let's go, God, and then they're wandering through the desert for a very long time, but God's taking care of them. He's giving them manna. He's giving them this bread from heaven and quail. He's making sure they have water. God's there with them. They end up at the Mount Sinai, and they're there for about a year while God gives Moses and all of them instructions on how to live, including the 10 Commandments and also how to build the tabernacle, which is a big tent where God can dwell with them. And it includes all the instructions for them on how they should live. But this whole time they're traveling through, they're really just trying to get to that promised land that God promised way back when in Genesis to Abraham, the land of Canaan. So they've been going that direction this whole time. And this part of the story is where they're finally at the doorstep of Canaan. This whole time they're finally at the promised land, right? So here's what happens. Moses tells, he gets one person, one leader from each of the 12 families, the 12 tribes of the Israelites there. He goes, okay, you. So he got 12 of them, and he says, you're going to go and you're going to spy out on the land. You're going to go check it out and then come back here and give us a report on what you find. So that's what happens. There's 12 of them, and they all go out to the land of Canaan. And they check it out, and they're like, oh, whoa, this place is awesome. There's so much good stuff here. Get out of here. Look at all that. There's giant grapes, pomegranates. This place is the land of milk and honey, is what they said. But then they're also looking, they're like, ooh, this place is very well fortified. There's big walls in this city, and oh, their military guys are huge. They're like giants. These guys that are there are huge. And we're not anywhere near that big. But this place is awesome. So they went back and they tell Moses and everyone, okay, here's what we found. And they brought with them when they came back some of the stuff that they found. And the grapes were so big that they had to carry them on big sticks, because they were just huge clusters of grapes. And they were like, there's these grapes there, there's pomegranates and figs, and oh my, there is everything. This place is great. And so Caleb, one of the 12 spies, he says, all right, you guys, we need to go in there now. Let's take that place. God promised that to us. And 10 of the 12 spies that went over there were like, whoa. We can't just go in there. Did you see the size of those guys? They're huge. And Caleb is like, yes, I understand that, but God promised us that land. And now's the time. We've made it. Let's go. And the 10 guys are like, no way. If we go there, we're going to die. We shouldn't do that. And they were fearful and they were scared. So much so that that night in their tents, they were all crying about it. They were like, they're so big. And they're going to kill us. And why did God bring us all the way here to die? Okay, that is enough of that. They are just whining and they're scared. And this whole time God was with them, they have forgotten. He's been there with them the whole time. They forgot about all the miracles. They're just thinking that they can't do it because they're smaller than them. But God can do anything, and he promised them this. Ugh, here we go again with all the complaining, right? And so Moses is talking to God, and Moses is like, please, forgive them and forgive us. They don't know what they're doing. They forget, and I don't know why. And even God's like, how many times are my people going to disobey me, to not trust in me, to not believe in me that I'm there for them after all this, right? And so what God says is you know what? You're not going to go in there right now. You're going to basically be on one big timeout. And God says, you guys are now going to wander through the wilderness for 40 years. And he says, look, Joshua and Caleb, they were faithful. They trusted in me. So I promise that they will end up in the promised land. But the other 10 people, the other 10 spies that had no faith in God, they will not survive those 40 years. They will die before the 40 years is up, and they will not see the promised land. So God is still keeping to his promise. God is not saying, all right, that's it. You guys aren't going into the promised land. He's not saying that. God promised them they were going to go in there. But now they didn't have faith in him. So now they have to wait 40 more years, and only the people who had faith in him are going to end up in the promised land, right? And so when I read this story, it's so easy for me to say, you know what, I would be more like Joshua and Caleb. I wouldn't be like those other guys. But you know what? There's times in my life where God has told me to do something, and I haven't, right? So this story is a good reminder that we're not perfect, right? It's easy to say we would be like Joshua and Caleb, but there was only 2 guys out of 12. Most of them were fearful. Most of them forgot that God has their back, right? And that they can do things that might be scary because God is with us, right? This is a good reminder, this story, that we should always trust in God. And it's hard for us, and that's why we sin. Every time we sin, we are essentially saying we don't have faith in God. We only have faith in ourselves, right? So this is a good story to remind us that we should always have faith, because even though we at times are not faithful to God, God is always faithful to us. He's never been unfaithful to us. And that's this story of Joshua and Caleb and how they had faith, and we're going to know that they will end up in the promised land, and we know that because God promised it, right? So that's this story. Bummer is they got to go wander through the desert for 40 more years. Way to go, guys. Way to go. Anyways, you can check out the story. I have the video for the story is down below in the description. There is a link to a Dropbox, and that Dropbox has the video in it you could watch, and it also has some other sheets here. It has the coloring page. You can color, right? And it says Joshua and Caleb trusted God to give his people the promised land. Look at those guys. Look at all those grapes. So you can color that. You can color the grapes however you want. If you want to color them yellow, you can color them yellow. And this is the activity page you can also print out, and it says Spy the Land. And on this, it says you got to find 3 bunches of grapes, 12 spies, and 5 grasshoppers that are hidden in this Bible story picture. So they're all throughout there. You got to try and find them, so that's kind of fun. It's like a hunt. You can do it. And then there's also a video link down below to Robin's Craft. And so let's get Robin's Craft to see what she did this week. And go. Boom. Wow. Robin, this is awesome. Check it out. It's like a giant bunch cluster of grapes that they would carry along. And look at this. There's a little wooden, you can use a pencil. She'll tell you can use a pencil or a little wooden dowel. And then this thing right here is just the grapes that goes right over it. Great job, Robin. Heavy grapes. And so the video down below will show you how you can make that. Thanks again, Robin. So that's this story, Joshua and Caleb. I hope you'd enjoy it. If you come to church, we got the House Kids Ministry is back opened up for kindergarten through 5th grade. It's awesome seeing you guys again and having it back open. Thank you, Lord, that we're able to do that. You guys enjoy the rest of your week, and I will see you next time. Later.